So it's been a really wild ride going from being a vocalist full-time to really stepping into that kind of CEO space, building a community and building IATQB and the BIG Festoon to what it is today. And there were a couple of really pivotal moments. So one was right at the very beginning when I realised that after being homeless and getting to a place of safety, I was singing full time. And one of the things that I did to keep myself safe was prop my phone up on the dashboard of my car and put my makeup on and get ready for my gigs. And whilst I did that, and I was live streaming on Facebook, people would begin to watch. And as I was talking and chatting and sharing with people what it was that I was getting up to, what my plans were for the future, more and more people started to watch. It was really, really consistently that I was doing this. And people started to say, oh, it's really inspirational what you're doing. And, thank you so much for sharing. And I realized that we're creating a community here. And there was a real shift in sort of doing that, just kind of like shouting out into the ether and sharing for sharing's sake, to really starting to be intentional about what I was sharing and the things that I was learning along the way. And people found that really helpful. And then once that realization had happened, I then moved that into a community on Facebook, the IATQ Hive, the I Am the Queen Beehive. And people were really looking for a space to be inspired, a space where they could, share their successes and share their challenges and do that in a really safe space. And that's just what the Hive started to facilitate. And then the second pivotal moment was I was looking for people who had created success, even though they'd experienced diversity. I'd experienced domestic abuse and I'd experienced homelessness. And I really wanted to prove and to share that it didn't matter where you've come from or what you've experienced, that just like bees aerodynamically shouldn't be able to fly, that they can indeed and do fly anyway. And so I came across the wonderful Lisa Johnson, a dear friend of mine, on the internet, and started to follow what she was doing. And she put out a shout out on Facebook on a status to say, hey, I'm going over to Malta for a couple of days. Does anyone want to join? And I didn't have any money at the time, not really, about £300. So I checked the price of the plane ticket, and it was just enough for me to be able to afford to get over there. And over there was a small group, about 12, 5, 6, 7-figure business owners. And I felt like such a really small fishy, but what they did is they, collaborated with each other. It was great watching, collaborate with each other. They were helping each other, really like masterminding together what their next steps would be. And then they turned their attention to me and said, Dani, what is it that you want to create? And I was like, I want to create something with and for my community, somewhere where we get to show up, wise up and rise up together. And Lisa really put the spotlight on me at the time and said, well, what's your specialism? What's going to move people towards you? Because if you're going to try and be everything to everybody, you're going to be nothing to no one, right? So I started to think, well, I've got 25 years performance experience. I've got over 15, nearly 20 years experience in the corporate world, where I was a learning development professional. What if I brought those two things together and then helped my community take up space? What if I was to teach them how to speak, how to connect in public, how to perform so that they can reach more people, create more impact, influence, and indeed grow their own communities? And that's really where the magic happened. And from there, we started to put on events and course programs, and it just snowballed so much so now we're award winners for best coaching and training practice, agent of change. And this year we've just been, I'm really proud of this, we've just been nominated for the National Diversity Awards as Entrepreneur of Excellence. So it's been a wild ride. So it's really important when you're building a really inclusive space to be educated, and not just to go and ask people to teach you for free. How do I be more inclusive? Actually go and seek out professionals with lived experience and pay them for consultancy so that you can get a proper audit of your business, of your delivery, of your events, if you're running events, and a proper prescription of what it is that you need to do and you need to implement so that you're doing it right. If you're just making it up as you go along, then chances are you're going to misstep and you won't be doing it intentionally. So I consult and partner with businesses such as Beyond the Binary, that's created and founded by the wonderful Alex Lynham, Joe McMeekin, who's founded Send Story from an inclusion perspective for disabled people and from a neurodivergent point of view. Samantha Labanzu from a more broad racial and cultural inclusion perspective. So really going out and seeking out consultants who have excellent experience, who are experts in the field, they've got experience themselves, and they can consult with me accordingly, and then I can go and implement properly. It really is the onus on ourselves to go and seek out that education and not expect that to be done for free. There are excellent supports and resources out there that we need to engage with. So me personally, I go out and get myself educated. I go and learn from people with experience, and that then enables me to create programs, events and learning surroundings that are really impactful and much more welcoming, much more inclusive and much more absorbable. So yeah, we're really setting the bar with that, and I'm really proud of that work that we're doing with those wonderful partners. So when I first started the business, I served primarily women because I was looking for a safe space for me to facilitate, for me to learn, for me to be supported. And actually, as my education grew and my knowledge around gender and inclusion grew, I realised that actually I didn't want to separate people. I wanted to bring people together. So understanding how to become a magnet for the right kind of people became the journey. So making sure that our messaging was centered in inclusive language, making sure that we were welcoming to all sorts of different people, going out and being a part of communities whereby I might be the minority in a situation, so that people can see that I want to be a part of other people's communities. Other people can see that they maybe want to be part of my community as a result of that. Instead of trying to separate people, actually bringing people together, because we all do well when we all do well. One of the things that I teach my speakers is that the inner work is just as important, if not more important, than the construction work of creating a great talk. As a speaker, you need to be a humble student of yourself. You need to be able to watch yourself back in order to generate feedback. You need to be able to elicit great feedback and be able to implement that accordingly. You need to be resilient. You need to be able to hear no and still get yourself back up off the floor and go and find the bookings, go and find those spaces to go and speak in. It really does take a lot of resilience, and remembering that there are people out there that you want to help and keep them right firmly at the center of everything is that you're doing is the important thing. It is worthwhile considering that most people experience some form of imposter syndrome whenever they are taking up spaces in new areas, whenever they are being more visible, especially if you are from an oppressed background or a minority background. The thing that I share with my students and my clients and my community is that people only can be what they can see. So it is important now more than ever for people from a wide variety of backgrounds, a wide variety of genders, a wide variety of lived experiences to be taking up space with their mission and their businesses, so that people out there who are from those backgrounds can see themselves, and that will inspire them to take up more space in the world. We need more people from a variety of backgrounds on those stages. It's absolutely necessary. It is a travesty how few places are truly inclusive when it comes to, lineups. If you are a member of the LGBTQIA community, for example, and you've got no visibility on a lineup of yourself or somebody like you or someone from your community, it's gonna smack of there's no inclusion for me here. None of these people have got a similar lived experience to me, so they're not really going to understand where it is that I'm coming from. And the same from our Black community, the same from our Hispanic community, the same from our South Asian community, like wherever it is that you're from or whatever community that you come from. If you can't see yourself, it becomes more difficult to think that the event producer is giving you any kind of consideration. So we can only be what we can see. And if you're feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome about like taking up space, it's remembering that is actually you become the giants on which other people will stand on the shoulders of. And that's so important. And I think it's worth saying that the depathologization of the concept of imposter syndrome is something that we need to consider. It's not a medical thing. It's a natural thing when you are positioning yourself as alpha in front of a pack of other mammals. And when we understand that actually it's a normal biological response, then we can start to interact with it accordingly. So let's get rid of the medicalization and the pathologization of imposter syndrome, understand it for what it is, and then smash through that and take up some space. So I took the decision a couple of years ago to have gastric sleeve surgery. And it was a really pivotal moment for me because I am an advocate of bodily autonomy, of self-expression, self-acceptance. And my body went through a whole shift in like very, very quickly before my whole audience's eyes. And bear in mind that, you know, my message has been centered around that kind of self-love, self-acceptance. You are who you are. And I think it was really powerful for me to be very, very honest for my reasons for doing that. It wasn't for aesthetic reasons, it was for health reasons. And secondly, I had a great and positive experience of visibility being in a larger body. So I had this sort of dual experience of being in a large body and having a great experience of being visible, and also being in a smaller body and having a great experience of being visible. What I want people to do is understand that their message, what they are saying, is far more important than what they look like. And I think a lot of people, when they're being visible, will often turn to their aesthetic, turn to what they look like and start to pick themselves apart. And that actually prevent them from taking up space, getting on stages, speaking, going into rooms that they wouldn't ordinarily go into. And so to that, I say, we've got to see you. We need to see you so that other people can see themselves in those spaces and take up space accordingly. You know, we're paving the way. You are not your bodies. You are your energy, and you are your message, and you are your soul. And yes, of course, some of what you look like might lean in and inform some of what you speak about, but actually it doesn't have to center around everything that you talk about. And you certainly shouldn't be picking yourself apart from an aesthetic point of view and have that prevent you from taking up space. Remember that the aesthetic of beauty and whatever that is a complete social construct, and your message is so much more important than that. Sharing vulnerably is something that I've always done, from putting my phone up on my car dashboard and putting my makeup on and telling people about the things that I was getting up to and the plans that I was making, all the way through to sharing some of the stories that I have around being homeless or experiencing domestic abuse. The idea behind sharing that vulnerability or some of those experiences, without going too vertical on it, is to humanize the message. You know, I could go up on stage, or many people go up onto a stage or into a space and educate, but people are seeking now more than ever to connect, and our vulnerabilities actually humanize us. If I was just to be sharing, you know, oh, my business turns over 1.3 million a year, or I, you know, sell out events in 48 hours, all of a sudden I become further and further away from the people that I'm trying to connect with. To actually say, I have this lived experience, and even though I've experienced adversity, my tenacity and my resilience and my kindness and my creation of community have actually led to my success. All of those things have paved the way to those things. Suddenly that humanizes the stories that I'm telling, and that becomes more connected. And therefore people can start to see how they can create that for themselves as well. Now, from a diversity and inclusion perspective, the more people that we've got from more different backgrounds that are sharing those stories, the more inspirational it is to a wider variety of people. For example, me sharing my story, if I was in a predominantly black community, would not necessarily land as well as somebody from that community sharing a similar story. And so when we serve up different stories from different types of people to a wide variety within a community, you're landing the plane with more and more of that community and helping them be connected together. Having lineups at events where you can see different lived experiences, people begin to start to join the dots, and it's within that humanity that we become connected. And that's an exciting thing, and there should be more of it. Music is a huge part of how I curate events, how I perform talks. It's a universal language, right? So within my events, I'll utilize music from different backgrounds that different types of people will recognize from their own backgrounds. I will sing to generate emotion. I might be singing about an experience I had when I was experiencing adversity and having had come through that. And I might sing something like She Used to Be Mine from the musical The Waitress to really punctuate that change and that shift in emotion. I might then want to raise the energy before I head into another section by singing Tina Turner's Proud Mary. I may want to really articulate within one of the talks that I'm doing a message centered around inclusion. So I might sing Lady Gaga's Born This Way, but curating your different music pieces when you're speaking can really add another layer and much more texture to the audience's experience. People seldom remember the words that you said. They'll remember how you made them feel. And music is a brilliant conduit for that. It's a universal language. So when you do that, and you do that really intentionally, whether that's with your walk-on music, your walk-off music, if you're doing like a closed eye piece or a meditation, or you want to create a feeling within the audience, music is a brilliant way to do that. What I've found is that when you have a diverse community and a community where people feel safe, they learn more in a positive way, they absorb each other better, they connect better, they collaborate better. And so my complete value set is centered around creating inclusive spaces. So I'll use consultants such as Send Story or Beyond the Binary to assess event situations and work out, how can we be more welcoming? How can we be more welcoming when you visit the website? How can you identify yourselves? We look at the social media that we put out there. We share very openly the different types of people that we work with so that people can see themselves and know that they are welcome in the space. We have within our social media, within our speaker cohorts, members of the trans community, members of the black community, women, non-binary people, gender fluid people, men. And so all of these different types of people can see themselves within our messaging and therefore will move more towards it because, hey, they can see themselves. They know that they're going to be safe there. They're not excluded. So by sharing in our marketing, sharing in our messaging, sharing in our language, and then when people arrive at our events, actually putting our money where our mouth is and providing obvious spaces where people are included, specifically, again, from a neurodivergent point of view or a disability point of view, once people can see outwardly that you're inclusive and then they come into your spaces, and indeed you are, that is a recipe for success. And we all do well when we all do well. A rising tide raises all ships. And when we jump out of our own echo chamber and allow ourselves to understand other people's lived experiences, it opens us up to a wider audience in the wider world. So actually, by understanding different people's lived experiences and what their buying needs are, what their connection needs are, what their physical needs are, then actually we can grow our audiences. So even from an economic point of view, it makes sense to have more diverse spaces so that we can have empathy, so that we know how to market to people, so that we know how to connect with people. We can decide who are our ideal clients or not, where are our ideal spaces or not. And we can only do that by being really vocal about what our inclusion and diversity practices are. I speak extensively to my community about allyship because it's necessary. If people are from an oppressed or minority community, they will often be fatigued. They will be tired, nay, exhausted, because what they have to navigate on their day-to-day life isn't the same as people who happen to be straight, white, heteronormative, and so on and so on. And this is because they've got to navigate on the daily anything from really complex microaggressions all the way through to out-and-out violence, out-and-out exclusion. And that leaves people feeling really tired. It leaves people feeling really unsafe. It leaves people feeling traumatized. And when you add on to that, the fact that a lot of people who are oppressed or from minority backgrounds will find that they are forced into situations where they're trying to educate people and they're already tired. And these people who are asking to be educated are being really lazy. Like they could go onto Google or go and access some training or, go and do their own research to alleviate that. And I think that a lot of people, although well-intentioned, aren't actually being good allies by trying to go to oppressed or minority communities to seek their education and ask for that labour for free. Or can you tell me why it is that you're feeling tired or exhausted? Well, imagine a tired or exhausted person or a person that's traumatized doesn't actually want to go reliving what their experiences are for the benefit of you and your education. So allies are needed to hold space for and to be the conduit for that understanding. Not from a saviour perspective, but from an alleviation of weight and labour perspective, from an alleviation of trauma perspective, to actually be welcoming and safe and listen to the oppressed and minority groups, to hear what they need and provide what they need. So then, as an ally, you can go out there and encourage other people to do the same. It alleviates a little bit of that trauma and a little bit of that labour and a little bit of that fatigue by being an ally, by actually stepping forward when oppressed and minority communities are experiencing these microaggressions or when they're experiencing violence, to actually step in and say, hey, no, this is wrong, instead of them having to do it as they always have done. Allies are needed now more than ever. They're needed in business spaces, they're needed in workspaces, they're needed at home, they're needed in communities. And all it takes is to have an open heart, an open mind, to take you out of it. It's not about you. And then to ease into, with that person, the asking of the question, how can I help you feel safe? What is it that you need to help you feel safe? What can I do? Not what can you teach me? It's just, what do you need? Let me help you. Let me be in service of you. Like, what can we do to help create equity, for example? Like, good allyship is to maybe look at a lineup as a speaker and see that lineup is all white and say, hey, do you know what? You don't need another one of me on your lineup. You need somebody else. Here's some great people that I know. Please consider them. And that might mean you don't get paid for that particular job. But guess what? That event is going to be served better. The audience is going to be served better. And we need to be more brave. We need to be more brave where our allyship is concerned. It's an absolute necessity. So my aspirations for IATQB is that we become the hub of entrepreneurialism and the entrepreneurial experience here in the UK and indeed globally. We aim to be growing, and it's happening. It's very exciting. Growing our event, the BIG Festoon, to become the biggest, the most joyful, the safest, the most inclusive and welcoming business event here in the UK. We're growing to 10,000 delegates by 2027. We're already on our way there. We've gone from 50 to 75 to 150 to 250 to 400 to 600 to 2,500. So we're really kind of growing at a rate of knots. So we are connecting with brands, we're connecting with other entrepreneurs out in the space, we're connecting with lots of different types of communities, and we're passing the mic. We're helping create diverse lineups within our speaker bureau. We're going to be home to the best in breakthrough British talent here in the UK and indeed abroad as we grow over, certainly in the US. And so as an event producer, people can come to us and go, hey, do you know what? We need representation on our stage. hey, guess what? We've got it. So the absolute goal for us is to be that hive of activity where business is concerned, but also one of the most joyful and inclusive spaces for entrepreneurialism here in the UK.